Hello everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today on extending the life of TDM switches. I'm Bobby Baine with Pulse Supply, and also joining me today is Marc with Telcobridges. Today we're going to talk about several ways to allow your existing TDM infrastructure to interact with SIP without having to replace the switch itself. There are several scenarios we'll cover here. And during the presentation, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the GoToWebinar control panel that you see there on your screen. We'll read them aloud and respond as we go. If we happen to have moved to a different slide or we miss your question, there will also be a chance at the end of the presentation to ask questions. So be glad to respond to any that you have. Let's get started. Today we're going to provide a brief introduction of our companies. We'll talk a little bit about supporting subscriber trunk growth. We'll talk about a few SIP trunking solutions that we have for you. We've got a call announcement solution to discuss that replaces the existing servers, the calling out servers you may have today. And lastly, we'll provide a brief general Telcobridges product overview. For those of you who may not be familiar with Pulse Supply, we're founded in 1995 as a distributor of connectivity products. By the late 90s, we began providing TDM to IP conversion products for our clients, who are typically carriers, large enterprise, and service providers in general. Now, Telcobridges is one of our key partners in this area, and we've been solving network challenges together with those folks since about 2008. The goal that we have today is to provide information to you that will be helpful and offer solution and ideas that allow new technology that's available to operate with the infrastructure that you already have in place, helping you stay within your budget constraints. If you'd like more information about Pulse, I'm not going to go over a lot of it right now. We'll say that for the end if you have questions about our background capabilities, and we'll be glad to follow up after the call as well. But now I'd like to hand the presentation over to Marc to cover the solutions that we have for you today. Marc?
Okay, very good. Thank you, Bobby. Well, for your information, I'm responsible for sales support at Telcobridges. Let me use just a few moments here to tell you about our company. Telcobridges is a Canadian company based in Montreal. We are a manufacturer of voice-over IP gateways and telecom solution platforms for carriers. At our headquarters, we house our production facilities, engineering, and software development organizations, and of course we provide 24/7 technical support for the products that we provide. The company exists now for 10 years, and we've been able to develop a TDM and voice over IP gateway which is very flexible and has a very large number of applications in carrier networks. Some of the things we do are provide solutions for, of course, bridging TDM and voice over IP networks in the form of a voice over IP gateway. These gateways are also used as trunking gateways in carrier networks. The products perform signaling conversion and can act as a signaling gateway, and also allow carriers to benefit from voice over IP networks for tandem switching or international long distance for these carriers. Our deployments are in more than 85 countries and exclusively in carrier networks. The products are carrier grade and encompass a number of features that make them carrier grade, such as high availability architecture for the software and power supply redundancy, and also in the protocols that are supported. And I'll tell you about some of these as we go through this presentation. I'd like to say that we understand you may need some help with your aging TDM switches. You have a number of challenges that you need to face. Some of them are listed here on this slide. I think possibly some that are most important ones is that well, you need to satisfy customer demand for new services. Those may be services that use voice over IP, but you also need to satisfy demand for legacy services such as trunks, T1 trunks for your customers, such as ISDN, PRI services. You need to keep that aging TDM switch in service until you're ready to migrate to next generation network architecture. And part of the presentation here today is to allow you to do exactly that. That is to migrate to an NGN architecture while you're still providing, still serving your customers today off of your existing switch. I'm going to present here during this webinar a solution for SIP trunks on how to also fulfill demand for ISDN PRI services, and I'll talk also specifically about replacing announcement systems in your networks. So let me first start here by telling you just a little bit about the product that I'm showcasing here, which is a TDM and voice over IP gateway. It's a carrier class media gateway that includes many features, and I've listed some of the high-level features here, such as integrated call routing, TDM to TDM switching, and voice over IP transcoding, and of course next-generation protocols such as SIP and H248 media gateway control protocol. The gateway also includes a number of SBC features which come in handy when deploying in voice over IP network. So let me talk first of all one of these use case scenarios here, which is called SIP trunking. There is an increasing demand, and I'm sure that you are realizing this as well. There's an increasing demand for SIP trunks. And a number of analysts project that this demand will keep going strong over the next few years. And I think we see it happening in the industry, and we're seeing some of the drivers for this demand, such as your business customers that are implementing more and more IPPBX solutions with SIP phone, the typical service interface to these IPPBXs, are SIP trunks, and I'm going to discuss now how you can use, how you can enable your TDM switch for SIP trunking. There are also other things happening, such as call centers who have been traditionally TDM based are moving to a SIP based architecture. Where their dialers or ACDs or IVR systems are now SIP-based or starting to be SIP-based instead of T1-based or TDM-based. And finally, there are a very large number of SIP carriers that are offering very low-cost inter-exchange traffic termination. And I'm sure that it would be interesting for many of you carriers to be able to benefit from these low-cost offerings to carry your traffic nationally or internationally. However, the traffic must be handed off to these carriers using SIP. So let's have a look at what solution can be presented here in order to enable your TDM switch for SIP and voice over IP. What I'm presenting here on this slide is a TDM and voice over IP gateway from Telcobridges. It's called the TMG 3200, and it's enabling this class 5 switch to receive SIP traffic, or to be able to deliver SIP trunks. In this case, I'm showing an example here where the class 5 switch is delivering SIP trunks to a call center. Usually these call centers are very high traffic generators. and many of them are migrating their infrastructure to SIP, and so they require SIP trunks. Well, it's possible for you to, say, enable your existing TDM switch to serve these customers with SIP trunks. So what I'm showing here is Telcobridges gateway interfacing on the left-hand side with the T1 interfaces or DS3 interfaces or an OC3 interface, and supporting ISDN PRI or SS7 signaling. So you can connect this gateway directly to your TDM switch, either on ISDN PRI trunks or on SS7 trunks where A links or F links are supported, and the gateway will convert that traffic to SIP in order for you to provide SIP trunks to this, in this example, this call center customers. This specific gateway here can support up to 2,000 simultaneous calls, and it supports some of the codecs that I've listed here, but many more as well. And I highlight in this specific case here where you're serving a call center, these customers often have a high demand in terms of call handling performance. Well, the gateway used in this case is not a bottleneck in the sense that a device such as this one, well, at least a Telcobridges gateway such as this one can support more than 500,000 busy hour call attempts, which is usually plenty in order to serve such a call center customer where it's important for them that the network or the devices in the network are able to keep up with their call generation or call handling capabilities. So this is one way you can enable your TDM switch and extend its life by putting a gateway in front of it and allowing the gateway to provide SIP services off of the TDM switch. Next, here is another example. In a way, it's very similar to the previous example, except instead of delivering services to the customer side, we're instead on the trunk side of the switch, where the gateway is enabling the use of SIP carriers, let's say for inter-exchange traffic. The gateway here is specifically interfacing with either your tandem switch or a class 5 switch using any of the TDM interfaces that are listed here, but most probably in this case specifically using SS7 signaling with A or F links. Just note that these links may be redundant. There may be more than one or two A links or F links. The gateway supports SS7 directly. That is, you configure the point code and all of the SS7 configuration directly into the gateway. You do not need another device in order to support SS7 on a Telcobridges gateway. So here's another example of how you can use the gateway when bridging TDM to voice over IP. In this case here, it allows you to use SIP trunks on the trunking side of your network and possibly benefit from low-cost either national or international carriers. Now I'd like to move on to a second type of application where the gateway can allow you to extend the life of your TDM switch, but also allow you to be ready for an eventual next generation network migration. And here I want to talk about supporting ISDN PRI growth. Yes, I think you will agree with me, ISDN is still in demand, or ISDN PRI specifically is still in demand, or at least in many areas, either because your customers are not willing to invest in new equipment, which would require them to spend a lot of money to establish a voice over IP infrastructure. They may just not be ready to move to SIP trunks or voice over IP for security reasons, for example. And we understand it is difficult for you in certain cases to add ISDN, PRI, or line-side equipment on your aging switches, either because their manufacturer discontinued or because the equipment is simply not available for you to do this. So we're providing a solution here using the Telcobridges gateway, which would allow you to add ISDN PRI ports inexpensively, or at the very least cost effectively, to your existing TDM switch, but also deploy a piece of equipment that is ready for a next generation network infrastructure because it supports SIP and voice over IP. So you can actually deliver more ISDN PRI services to your customer without actually investing in your existing TDM switch. You can deliver more PRIs to your customer. You can also concentrate these PRIs because the gateway can act as a concentrator, and then you're in fact actually fulfilling the demand for your customers without investing further in your TDM switches or simply solving the problems that you may have in adding more PRIs to your switches. Let me present how this is done. You'll see that this diagram is very similar to the previous diagrams. However, there is one main difference, is that in this type of deployment here, the gateway is only supporting TDM connections. So there are T1 connections towards your class 5 switch or signaling transfer point, and there are T1 ports or ISDN PRI services being delivered to your customers. The Telcobridges gateway is in fact switching or converting the signaling from SS7 to ISDN PRI on the customer side. To talk specifically a little bit here about the TMG3200, it's a device that can support, in this configuration, up to 32 T1s towards your TDM switch with SS7 signaling, here again either A-links or F-links, and up to 32 ISDN PRIs on the customer side, supporting a variety of ISDN variants that are individually configurable per port. And I specifically list here National ISDN 2, AT&T 4 and 5 ESS, as well as DMS 100 and DMS 250. So what you're actually doing here is being able to add ISDN PRI services to deliver additional PRI services to your customers without actually adding any equipment to your existing TDM switch. Instead, you're adding this TDM and voice over IP gateway device to do so, and it's much more cost effective. And what's more is that this device includes, as by default, support for next generation protocols such as SIP and H248 Media Gateway Control Protocol, as well of course as voice over IP interfaces that support RTP and the appropriate codecs that you'd like to use in your network. There's no additional cost required when you want to migrate this solution from a TDM to TDM scenario to a SIP or voice over IP to ISDN PRI or TDM scenario. It's simply a matter of configuration, and you have the flexibility to perform that configuration when you like, when you are ready to perform this migration, either on a subscriber basis or on a switch basis. It's easy for you to be able to change the configuration of the gateway and migrate it to your next generation architecture. So let me move on here into the third and last application scenario for the Telcobridges TDM and Voice over IP gateway is that the product being versatile and flexible, it supports the ability to play pre-recorded announcements and tones. And we understand that in many of the carrier networks in North America, existing announcement systems are, let's say, out of date, or they've been manufacturer discontinued, or they're just simply expensive to repair or replace. And we certainly hear they are failing more and more often in your networks. There are a few alternatives that exist, or the alternative may be too expensive. We are proposing a cost-effective solution here to replace your outdated announcement servers, and that's simply Telcobridges TDM and Voice over IP gateway. It has the ability to play pre-recorded announcements and or tones on incoming calls. So the solution here is to use the gateway, interface it using T1s on service trunks, so just as you do today with your existing announcement systems, and configure, let's call it a playlist, or configure the announcements, upload the announcements, to the gateway, and configure which announcements need to be played in which, for which types of calls that are being transferred to the gateway. The gateways are available in a number of different capacities. I'm showing here an example where this TMG 3200 unit supports up to 64 T1s, so we can play 1,500 simultaneous announcements. Possibly that can be useful for you if you consolidate your announcement servers into a single device, or you may select to use a gateway which supports fewer ports, and that's also possible as well. Let me move on here to the section of the presentation where I give you just a brief product overview. And so let me start by presenting to you here the full product line. So the gateways are available with different port densities. You see here in the low density column a product called the TMG 800 that supports from 1 to 8 T1s, and there's a medium density product called the TMG 3200 which supports T1s, but is also available with 1, 2, or 3 DS3s, or 1 OC3, and then finally there's a large gateway that supports a very large number of ports, and that just depends on the different configurations or deployments that are required. Just note that all of the products are available with AC or DC power inputs, and they are all available with redundant power supplies, and they are all implement high availability software and hardware architecture, and so they're truly carrier-grade products. Let me move on to describe one of these products. I've selected to present here the TMG 3200 RJ product and show you some of the physical characteristics of the unit. This is a medium density gateway, and this specific type of product supports from 8 to 16 T1s. You can see the 16 T1 connections here on the rear of the unit. Each interface is configurable independently for different ISDN variants, or can be part of different ISUP kit groups. You can configure multiple point codes in this device, multiple MTP2 links. It's very flexible. The other interesting thing about this specific unit is that the addition of T1 ports anywhere between 8 and 16 is a software upgrade, and it doesn't even require any downtime on the gateway, and it can be done remotely. I think that can provide you some additional flexibility and reduce the effort required to manage your network. And then finally, my last slide here, this product overview, is just to give you an overview of all of the features that are supported by the Telcobridges gateways. I've mentioned throughout the presentation support for SS7, and the SS7 signaling is embedded into the gateway. You configure all layers of the stack in the gateway, that is MTP2, MTP3, and ISUP. You configure point codes in the gateway. You do not need an external device to support SS7. SS7 over IP using SIGTRAN is also supported, as well as, of course, SIP and SIP-I, SIP-T signaling. SIP is a standard feature of the gateway. It's included in all of our gateways, and of course traditional T1 signaling protocols. We've talked earlier about ISDN PRI, but the gateway also supports T1 CAS and CAS R21E1. I list here some of the codecs that are supported in the gateway. There are also other codecs that are supported but not listed here, such as some wireless codecs and others. All of the gateways support H.248 media gateway control protocols, such that it will integrate easily with your soft switch architecture. And the gateways support SNMP, such that it can report alarms via SNMP traps to your existing network management system or network operations center. And the gateways have a very high support a very high call rate, and I list here a sustained completed calls per second for each type of gateway. So this was the main portion of the presentation. I'm moving here to conclude the webinar. I'm going to say a few words here in summary, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bobby, who will present some contact information for you to find out more. And while he does that, I will look at the questions that you've sent in, and I'll read them out and answer them. So finally, here in summary, in this short webinar, we've presented 3 ways in which the Telcobridges gateway can extend the life of your TDM switch, that is in supporting ISDN PRI growth without without requiring any investment in your existing TDM switches. You can use the gateway as well to enable your TDM switch for SIP trunks and voice over IP, such that you can provide new services to your customers or support specific applications that are required, like by a call center, for example. And you can use this new technology to replace outdated announcement systems to play the announcements on service trunks on your switches. But what's important is that, and I hope that I've presented this correctly, is that the solution is future-proof in that all of the gateways come standard with the protocols required to support voice over IP and be able to easily migrate to your next generation switch architecture. So I'd like to thank you for your attention and allowing me to present this, and I'll ask Bobby to present this contact information and invite you to find out more while I have a look at the questions that have been submitted. Bobby?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mark. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into the webinar, and we will be glad to answer any questions you may have about this technology, interoperability, We can be contacted at the address listed there on the screen there, bbaine@pulsesupply.com, or visit our website for more solutions or more information about Telcobridges. We'll also follow up with an email with this contact information as well. So I want to give you every opportunity to contact us, ask whatever questions you may have about the solutions presented by Telcobridges. So again, Mark, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So I do have a few questions here. Let me read the questions out loud and answer them. The first question here is, can I oversubscribe my TDM switch ports? And the answer here is yes. I presented in one of the slides here, I presented a solution where the gateway can be used to deliver ISDN PRI services to your customers, and the interface to your existing TDM switch is T1s with SS7 signaling. So of course it's possible for you to deliver more capacity on the customer side or on the access side than you actually have towards the switch. The gateway's call routing engine will route the calls from the TDM switch to the customers based on calling numbers or called numbers or incoming trunk groups. The gateway supports has a very flexible routing engine which allows you to route calls that way. So yes, you can oversubscribe your switch ports and deliver actually more capacity to your customers. There's another question here that says, can customer-originated calls be routed over SIP trunks so that fewer switch ports are needed for customer traffic? And the answer is yes. The gateway, in fact, is a very flexible, if I put it this way, telephone switch. It has a number of ports, TDM ports and SIP ports or voice over IP ports, and the gateway can switch calls between any of these interfaces. So just as an incoming call on a TDM port can be routed to a SIP trunk, an incoming call on a SIP trunk can be routed back out on a SIP trunk, and the gateway will perform the voice over IP transcoding if required. There's another question here, and it is, can this solution migrate and interoperate in a soft switch environment? Yes. Of course, this solution can migrate into a soft switch environment, and the key reasons why it can do that is that it supports the protocol that are required for this functionality, those being SIP, if your soft switch is SIP-based, and the other key protocol to have is H248, also known as MegaGo, Media Gateway Control Protocol, which allows a soft switch to remotely control the gateway via this open protocol. And for your information, the gateway has been interop tested with the major soft switch vendors for all of these protocols, that is SIP and also H248 MegaGo and SIGTRAN as well, because in certain network architectures the gateway must act as a signaling gateway and relay SS7 signaling to a centralized soft switch. And there's another question here is, can this solution scale to OC12? Well, actually, I think the answer is, on its own, no, it cannot, because the largest gateway here supports multiple OC3 interfaces. However, Pulse Supply is in a position to offer a solution in order to multiplex or concentrate these OC3s into a single OC12 connection. So I would say Pulse is able to recommend a solution for you if you need to support OC12. And finally, thank you. And finally, there's a last question here, and will this presentation be available online? Bobby, help me with this, because I think the answer is no, but however, if you've registered for the webinar, we can send you a copy of the presentation.
Yeah, that's correct. And like I mentioned, after the presentation is completed, we'll send emails out with their contact information. If you'll just reach back out to us and let us know specifically what you're interested in, and if you'd like a copy, we can make that available to you.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's it, Bobby. There are no more questions. I thank you, everyone, for your attention, and thank you very much for the questions. Bobby, would you like to close, please?
Absolutely. Again, everyone, we much appreciate the attendance on this call. We hope the information has been useful to you. We're here for any questions you may have. So thank you to everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Muted.